Hello, Joe Markowitz here with today's Liberty Dispatch. It's been a little while since I've been with you, been doing a lot of traveling, a lot of meetings, spending time with a lot of people. Excited to be back with you here. I want to get right into this on a Liberty Dispatch, and the title of today's Liberty Dispatch is called You're Canceled. Oh yeah, here it comes. You're canceled. Hey, by the way, before I really get into this, check the shirt out. Really love this this release. It's called Fear is Not a Virtue. Fear is not a virtue. In a world today where there's virtue signaling going on, where people are being shamed because we don't conform to somebody's moral interpretation of what virtue is, I got to believe that this is a great pushback, great conversation piece. I was out and about today, got a lot of comments on it. You're going to love it. Check it out on our site, defendergear.com. Okay, this last week, President Joe Biden. It's tough to say that, and because it's hard to really, it's really hard to draw closure to what happened over the last in the fall. It's really hard, and but nonetheless, he is currently our sitting president, and he did his first State of the Union address. On top of multiple trillion-dollar programs, just an expression of his view of the role of government, which is one of big government, of gigantic trillion-dollar programs to try to fix all the ills of this world, to really, I'm going to say, intrude in just about every aspect of Americans' lives. Because that's just what progressives do. They believe that you and I are not capable of governing ourselves, that the government needs to come in and be the solution, be the mommy and the daddy, and provide everything for you because you're not capable of governing yourself. Part of his speech, and I didn't watch the whole thing, I caught the highlights, but this one really got my attention. By the way, don't feel bad if you didn't see it either. Not too many people did. Only 11 million Americans watched the State of the Union. It was a real snoozer, but nonetheless, boring, but big on socialism, big on statism, big on progressivism. And one of his quotes was all about this. He said, we the people are the government. Now, wait a minute. That is... we the people, you and I, just read the first stanza of our Constitution, we the people, us. Just a little side note. When the government is afraid of the people, then we have, or at least we have a tendency towards freedom. If the people are afraid of government, then we have a tendency towards tyranny. Joe Biden, President Biden, we the people, the government is the people. Isn't it ironic that this very same man who, when he was a junior senator from Delaware, 40 years ago to the day, from best I can tell, 40 years ago to the day, he sat in the chamber of the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C., and listened as a junior senator from Delaware, that was Joe Biden, to another president give his State of the Union speech. His name was Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan came into office with a philosophy, a fiscal conservative philosophy, also one that was very big on the principles of individual liberties and freedoms. And he came into government criticizing the government because it was way too big. And he more or less, his whole speech came down to this, that government is the problem, and ushered in 8 years of fiscal conservatism and individual liberties and a promotion of the American experience and our history, our heritage. It was a beautiful thing. How ironic, 40 years later, that junior senator, now the president, is actually 180 degrees out in terms of a political philosophy that is what's best for the people. I want to call this Liberty Dispatch, You're Canceled. You're canceled. Because I've been talking about the religion of progressivism, haven't I? And and I'm glad to be back with it. I want to address one of the tenets of the religion called progressivism, and one of those tenets is, well, you're canceled. To be able to cancel or censor or to control speech and thought that does not conform to the collective. I'm picking up my little a little pocket. U.S. Constitution. There we go. All right. The First Amendment. First Amendment reads like this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. We call them the 5 freedoms of our guaranteed to us, not by government, but by our Constitution. We are a constitutional republic. Okay, so I want to get into this. The topic is today, you're canceled. And I want to address the threat that we have from big government and progressivism and the left on our individual liberties and freedoms, specifically freedom of speech. Just about every American would say freedom of speech, very, very important. But now you've got this religion that is permeated through our society, through academia, corporatism, government, which says, now wait a minute, free speech, yes, we all agree that as long as it conforms to the approved speech. And look, I'll just say this. It's difficult, very difficult, for the government to remove the First Amendment or any amendment of our Constitution, or to actually add a new amendment. There could be the establishment of hate speech laws, and you're hearing more and more about that. But in the end, any law established that would diminish our freedom of speech, it would be a very difficult thing to pass. So, in order to do that, arbiters of and supporters of and believers in this progressive movement can't use laws to force necessarily, in a short period of time, force their beliefs upon American citizens. So they have to use allies. They have to be able to have their allies to be able to enforce this philosophy, this religion of progressivism. Who are these allies? Who are the ones to become the enforcers on the American public of this religion? Well, it is corporations, big tech, it is academia, social media, even our corporations. I have very, very good friends. One of the guys, I won't give you his name, but I work out with him. You know, we go to the gym, we talk about this stuff, and he believes everything that you and I believe in. He is conservative. He just groans when he sees what happened, like with the election and some of the suspect laws being broken, election laws being broken, suspect actions about elections, and we're all hurt by that. We're all very concerned about this. Very concerned about the fact that we're losing our freedoms to be able to express ourselves without fear of reprisal. He says, Joe, I believe in everything. I want to be able to support you. I want to be able to express myself, but I'm so worried about my boss could fire me. They look at all my social media. And if I'm talking as an employee about beliefs that the company does not approve of, following a company line, that I could lose my job. I could be withheld from promotions. I could fall out of grace. I mean, it's horrible. I want to get back to this. It is corporate media. It is big tech. It is academia. It is the social media. It is these are the enforcers of this progressive movement. In an indirect way, it's government and their allies sanctioning political correctness and a suppression of free speech. And people don't know what to do about it, because if we stand up and say enough is enough, this is wrong, then people are afraid that something could happen to them. Lose their jobs, be canceled in some way, their social media accounts canceled, them being doxxed. You can't, people may lose promotions. Maybe a student might not get the better grade that he or she deserves, or maybe a recommendation or a positive referral from a professor. If that professor is unhappy with the way that child thinks, and it goes on and on. It's this progression, this religion of progressivism. It's an elimination of open, free, public, respectful debate. I like to say this: if your ideas are so good, lefty, how come you have to force them upon us? Why don't you make an argument for your side? And I'll respect it. You have an opinion. You should respect it. I have an opinion. And that's what a democratic society is all about debate and free expression and free speech. And certainly what's concerning is some of these programs that are being now pushed by our teachers unions and curriculums in our school systems and colleges that are really indoctrinating our children about things like critical race theory, which is all it is teaching the races to hate each other and teaching people to hate each other and causing more division and more strife in our society. And it's not good. Where does this all lead? Where does this all lead to? To a persecution of anybody that thinks or talks, believes contrary to the collective. And that's what this is all about. The topic of today's Liberty Dispatch. You're canceled. I do have historical backing on this. Listen to this. Ben Franklin said, "Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom. And no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech." Thomas Jefferson said, "Reason and free inquiry are the only effectual agents against error." It was George Washington that's said this way, and I'll just kind of condense this down for sake of time here. But he said, "The freedom of speech may be taken away, and dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter." Another great quote that I love is by Ben Franklin. "In those wretched countries where a man cannot call his tongue his own, he can scarce call anything his own. Whoever would overthrow the liberty of a nation must begin by subduing the freeness of speech." That was Ben Franklin. And so, just to wrap this thing on up here, the topic of today's Liberty Dispatch is called "You're Canceled." It's like I'm watching George Orwell's 1984 movie. It's like I'm watching right before my eyes the Hunger Games movie series, if you know what I'm talking about, or the Divergent series. I mean, this is what is happening right now, and my final appeal to you is this, and that is to wake up to this movement that steals away the voice of any opposition. We're not totally there yet, but if we don't do anything about it, we're going to be there, and it will be very hard to endure. This is Joe Markowitz with today's Liberty Dispatch.